This is the blueprint on how to looks max in the gym. And doing it this way, you don't have to hit your face with a hammer to try and rebuild your jawline. You don't have to start testosterone. You don't have to microdose methamphetamine, which is absolutely nuts. You also don't have to take any Botox. You don't have to add any fillers. You don't have to inject anything into your body. This is how you looks max in the gym. And if you don't know what looksmaxxing is, it's basically trying to improve your outward appearance so that you can get a date or attract a mate. It's very superficial, it's very aesthetic based, but this is what this is going to be about, improving your aesthetics through the gym and nutrition. Step number 1 is going to be, if you're not already there, trying to get in between the 10 to 15% body fat range. This is where the flat stomach exists, and that's really what we're going for here. If you want to optimize it, you can go for the six-pack, which is more towards 10%. If you just want a flat stomach, you've never had one before, or you aren't there yet, you can get to somewhere between 13 to 15%, and you'll happily find yourself there. What this is going to require from you is a calorie deficit. And if you need help creating a calorie deficit, because you've never done it before, and you don't know how to lose weight, you can use the link in my description to my free calorie calculator. It doesn't cost you anything but an email address. But basically, let's do some quick maths. Let's say your maintenance calories. So if you just wanted to keep your weight the same, let's say that that's 3,000 calories. If you wanted to create a calorie deficit, that's just a fancy way of saying you have to burn more calories than you consume. So if you wanted to lose 500 grams, or basically a pound per week, what you'd have to do is create a calorie deficit of around 3,500 calories per week. So let's just put that there, 3.5k calories per week. So basically what that is per day is 500 calories. So if you wanted to create a calorie deficit from 3,000 calories as maintenance, you would be eating 2,500 calories. That's going to put you at, let's say you're 99 kilos, you're going to be 98.5 the next, 98 the next, 97.5, 97, and it just continues to go like that. You may have to adjust later on, but that's going to give you a good start to lose body fat. Now, obviously, this is just an example for this, but the numbers that I've come up with here are based on the fact that 7,700 calories is around 1 kg of body fat. So if you wanted to lose 1 kilo per week, you would actually have to create a calorie deficit of 1,100 per day, because that's 7,700 divided by 7. So you have the weekly calorie deficit you need to create divided by 7, that's your daily calorie deficit. That would be the first thing that I would try to do. Now, I know that there are men and women that like people with a bit more cushion for the pushing. But ultimately, if we're trying to improve our aesthetics, a really simple way to do that, simple, not easy, a really simple way to do that is to drop your body fat and get leaner. So not only does it affect how you look with your face, but it affects what your clothes look like on your body. It also may internally affect your self-esteem and your confidence, which is a big part when attracting your mate that looksmaxxing doesn't even cover. So that's the first thing that I would focus on doing. Now next, I'm going to talk about muscle groups to develop. And at the end of talking about all these muscle groups, I'm going to show you how you can apply that within your programs, so make sure you stick around until then. Now, the muscle groups that I would primarily focus on is going to be in order of priority, because I think it's important to create a certain aesthetic when we're trying to looks max in the gym. So I'm going to put number 2 because this is going down the list, but you know, assuming number 1 is dropping body fat. The first muscle group that I'd really focus on would be your shoulders. And I would look at training your shoulders anywhere between 2 to 4 times per week, up to 3 to 5 times per week, depending on how you recover and how you feel the DOMs for when training your shoulders. Now, I don't mean seated barbell overhead press, seated dumbbell overhead press. That's really cool exercises for the shoulder, but they're going to recruit a lot of anterior deltoid, the front of the shoulder, which is necessary for development, but also gets trained when you train your chest. So I really want a big focus on lateral raises, lateral raise variations. Okay, So what that could be is just, you could do your dumbbell lateral raises. You could do single arm dumbbell lateral raises with a lean in, which I really like. You can do cable lateral raises. So you can do behind the back cable lateral raises, single arm cable lateral raises. You can even do cable Y raises, which aren't technically a lateral raise, but fall pretty close to it. There's a new cable lateral raise that I've discovered and have been doing lately, which is like a lying down cable lateral raise where you're on your back, the cables are set to knee height, and you're coming back and doing the cable lateral raise like that. That is fantastic. I would recommend that. So there are many options that you can try, but this is where I would start. So I would be doing lateral raises 3 to 4 times per week, 2 to 4 times per week to really build the width, because they focus on the medial deltoid, which is the shoulder that basically gets you wide shoulders. So we're trying to kind of create this aesthetic of that whole Superman look, the upside down triangle look, right? So wide shoulders at the top, and then the first step of dropping body fat is going to help bring that waist in, which is just aesthetically going to look more pleasing. Smaller waist, bigger shoulders, it gives you this very masculine look. So I would focus on lateral raise variations anywhere between 2 to 4 times per week, like I said, but I would still do the overhead presses, and I would look at doing seated barbell overhead presses, or I would look at doing the same things but with dumbbells. So just a dumbbell overhead press, and I feel like doing those once a week are still going to keep them in the picture. It's going to stop your anterior deltoids from lacking, but it's not doing so much that it's taking any of the medial deltoid work away, because they need to get worked primarily to get wider shoulders. In terms of rear deltoids, I'm not a huge fan of training them, as I do assume that they do get trained with your back work if you're training your back adequately, which is a conversation probably for another YouTube video. But the first muscle that I'll be looking at is shoulders, and then once we have these wide shoulders, we're still going to focus on the top of the upside down triangle. The next muscle group that I'd be looking at building is lats. And with lats, I would be looking at training them around 2 to 3 times per week. Let me put that, shoulders will be anywhere between 2 to 4 times per week. Okay? And I would be looking at doing pull-up variations or chin-up variations. Obviously, this depends on how strong you are. If you can't do a full body weight chin-up or pull-up, I'd look at doing assisted. You can do band-assisted or the assisted pull-up or chin-up machine. I feel like that's really cool. I'd also be looking at, so with lats, training them, obviously, we're trying to do the vertical pull movement, but you can also train them by doing row movements. So you can do like a single arm dumbbell row, a prone dumbbell row, a seated row. It just really depends on your execution. And what you want to do if you are trying to train your lats in row movements is drop your shoulder blades down, and then when you pull, just pull until your elbows are at your torso. We don't want to pull all the way back and get scapular retraction, because now our lats aren't necessarily being used as much as they could be if your shoulder blades are locked down and you're just squeezing your lats. So you do have your row variations, like I said, single arm dumbbell row, etc. And then you also have the straight arm lat pull down variations. So straight arm lat pull down, very cool. I also like a cable straight arm lat pull down, so you can just do it with a straight bar, or if you have a cable machine that's very close together, you can do the cable straight arm lat pull down, which is a very cool addition as well. Now, after lats, I would be looking at training your chest and focusing on that. So once again, you can't really just train one muscle group in isolation and just say, I'm going to build my shoulders now I'm going to build my lats, now I'm going to build this. So go down the list of things, and if you feel like shoulders are what you need to build right now, then what you do is you put all the other muscle groups basically at maintenance or cruise mode, and then try to focus on directing your training volume into your shoulder training. And I would only look at building up around 2 muscle groups at once. If you're trying to, like, if you think your whole body is a lagging muscle group, if you're just trying to do heaps and heaps of training volume for everything, you're going to smash yourself, you're going to get too fatigued, and you're going to burn out and most probably give up. To prevent that, I would only focus on growing 1 or 2 muscle groups at a time, and then when you feel like they're in a great spot, put them back on the back burner at maintenance levels of training volume, and then try to grow 2 other different lagging muscle groups, so you're hopping from muscle groups time to time. All right, so yes, number 3, we are going to be looking at training chest. So how do we train our chest? We have presses and we have flies. Okay, there are a million different chest presses, chest press machine, bench press, incline bench, dumbbell chest press, push-ups, you know, they're all presses. Do ones that are really great for you. Some of my favorite picks are incline dumbbell chest press with 15 to 30 degrees incline, incline bench press, once again 15 to 30 degrees. That seems to be my favorite angle for incline, because not only am I training my chest, but I'm maximizing my upper chest development. With flies, I personally prefer cable flies because there's constant tension throughout the entire motion, as opposed to when you do them with dumbbells, at the top the chest isn't really working. And then with the cables you can also do crossover, which I really like. I like getting extra range of motion whenever possible, and with dumbbell flies, if you do a crossover, it literally does nothing, but the dumbbell's going to hit you in the face. So I wouldn't do that. Presses and flies is where I would kind of sit. And in terms of chest, it can get quite sore because it's a strong muscle group. I would just look at training it 2 to 3 times per week. Okay, number 4. Arms. And this is probably where most people would start, but I seriously don't believe that it has the impressive, like, wow factor that people think it has. If you have big arms, it feels cool. I'm not trying to say that I have huge arms, but if you have big arms, it does feel impressive, because like your t-shirts feel a bit tighter, you feel like, oh yeah, you know, like I'm really filling out. But when you look at someone from afar, if you see the shape of like wide shoulders, wide lats, small waist, that has much more of an effect, I think, visually and aesthetically than it does it with just someone with a standard physique, let's just say up and down, but he has big arms. Okay, cool, you have one great thing going for you, but what about the overall aesthetic and shape or silhouette, which is what a lot of people see. So arms, you know, okay, we have biceps, and one thing I'll say about biceps is we want to try and train them so arms can be anywhere between 2 to 5 times per week, because you can divide it into biceps and triceps. So if you want to do like push and pull, you know, you can train them quite frequently. But with biceps, you know, there are curls where you can put your hands behind your torso. So I'm going to put behind torso. So, and these are things like incline dumbbell bicep curls, incline cable bicep curls, where your arms are behind your torso and you're curling up from there, so you're getting a deeper stretch. And then there are curls where you're in line with the torso, so that's just like your standard alternating dumbbell hammer curl, let's say, in line with the torso, and then you have in front of torso. And these are things like your cable spider curl or your dumbbell spider curl, or your preacher curl where your arms are in front. So I like providing variation because it challenges the bicep in all different areas, the stretch position, in the middle position, and also in the shortened position, and I like that variation. So like you could do on Monday a curl with your arms behind your torso, on Wednesday a curl with your arms in line with your torso, and then on Friday you could do curls in front like a preacher curl. That's how I would personally mix it up, all right? And then we have our triceps. And the way that I would look at training them, man, there's a ton of different exercises, but you can hit them in the shortened position as well and in the lengthened position. Some of my favorites are obviously weighted tricep dips. They're really fantastic. You lean a bit more forward to get lower chest. That's more of a chest dip, or you can be more upright and get the triceps working. So I love dips for sure. You know, you can do your skull crushes using dumbbells or using easy bars or barbells. They're really great options. I also like a pretty unique exercise that I don't see a lot of people doing, the cross cable tricep extension. Let's get that in there. Let's get it some love. Let's try to popularize it. And that's really good for the long head of the tricep. A really unique one. And if you haven't done that before, when you do it, you unlock a lot of progress early on because it's so novel to your tricep training. Cross cable tricep extension. You know, there are tricep pushdowns. I'm just not a huge fan. I do love the overhead cable tricep extensions. They're really fantastic. But you can train these anywhere between 2 to 5 times per week. And once again, you can hit like dips on a Monday, then skull crushes on a Wednesday, and then the cross cable tricep extension on a Friday. There are so many options, but the arms is the next muscle group that I would be using. And then after arms, we can't just be so top heavy and just wear baggy pants everywhere so no one looks at our calves or our legs. But number 5 has to be, let's just do it all over. It has to be legs, right? So there's quads and hamstrings, which kind of gives your muscles that full look. But if you're ignoring your calves and your glutes, it's gonna look a bit weird. So let's just say legs in general. Now, one thing that I see that really bothers me with male training, mate, they're training their legs once a week. Like, what do you expect? Of course you're going to have small legs if you train them once per week. We need frequency, my friends. So 2 to 3 times per week is how many times we want to train our legs. Once again, if you feel like this is a lagging muscle group and you need to build them up. Okay, so let's just break it into, all the obvious departments. We have quads, we have hammies or hamstrings, you have your glutes. I'm not a huge fan of growing the glutes, but I think genetically I've just had them and I get them worked from doing squats and RDLs and things like that, but I don't like doing kickbacks and stuff like that, but that's just me. Some people really do want the glute shelf. And then lastly, we have calves. So with quads, you have, so leg extension is a great one. I love it. I love the lean back leg extension preferably, but we have our squats, we have our split squats, we have lunges, we have hack squats, we have leg presses. There are a ton of options. So that's where I would look at starting. And once again, within this like leg training, if you have smaller quads, focus on that more. Maybe train them twice and train hammies only once type of thing. Or just like make the training volume skew more towards quads, which is what I would do instead of just training hammies once per week. Anyway, hammies, obviously you have the seated leg curl, lying leg curl, very self-explanatory, but then we also have the RDLs. We have single leg RDLs. We have the weighted 45-degree back extension or body weight. You can do them single leg too if you're a gangster. Then we have glutes, okay? So these are going to get worked from the exercises like I was saying previously with the quads and hammies, but if you want to primarily work them, obviously we have the hip thrust. Thank you, Uncle Brett Contreras. We have the Cas glute bridge from Kasim. Forgot his first name. Shivers, man, come on. Anyway, Coach Kasim, the Cas glute bridge, we also have single leg hip thrust, which I'm a huge fan of because you can do them body weight to failure, set anywhere between 5 to 15 reps, and it gets a really great burn on your glutes. And then we have, kickback variations, 30-degree glute medius kickback. You can kind of knock yourself out that way. And calves, I'm a big fan of a standing calf raise machine, or you can do it in a Smith machine. Or you can do a calf press, which is where you're sitting in the leg press machine and going your calves up and down like that. It's kind of like standing, but it's not the bent leg calf raise, which is like the seated calf raise, simply because the standing calf raise machine or doing calves with a straight leg is going to hit the gastrocnemius more, which is the big diamond part of the calf, which really pops. If we do the seated calf raise, we're also going to be training a lot of soleus, which is the bottom part of the calf, which I believe can kind of get you looking kind of cankly. Excuse my, what's the word, colloquialism. So that's where I would look at in terms of muscle groups. Now, I told you I would tell you how to apply it in your programming, and basically it's kind of a taste of what I was saying with the bicep training. So you need to look at your training programming over the week, okay? So if you have a lagging muscle group, like it's, if you're like, all right, bro, the first one, shoulders, I really need to build them up. I don't want Monday just looking like a huge shoulder day and you just smash them once per week. I want you to look at spreading the volume across. So let's just take a personal example from me at the moment. I'm trying to build my shoulders and I'm trying to build my lats at the moment, okay? So I'm doing 5 shorter sessions. I was training 3 or 4 times per week, but it just wasn't happening because they were too long. So now I've done like smaller 45-minute sessions, 5 of them over the week. Sometimes they're 30 minutes. I'm not a fan of it, but anyway. So I'm trying to build up my shoulders and my lats. So I'm doing like a lateral raise here on Monday. Let's get some lines going so you can see it. And I don't train weekends because that's wife and daughter time. So I like to train lateral raises 3 times per week, just like that. And then I like to do a seated dumbbell overhead press here, and then I'll do like another lateral raise here. So I'm doing a lot of lateral raises throughout the week, and then I'm doing an overhead press maybe once a week because I'm still doing my incline chest press and all that stuff, which hits the anterior deltoid anyway. So if I'm trying to build my shoulders, I'm training them, as you can see, 1, 2, 3 times per week. I'm also trying to build my lats as a big weakness. So I'm doing like 2 lat exercises here, and then I'm doing them again on this day because this is more of like a full body upper day. Full upper day. So as you can see, I don't do them on one of the days. So I'm training them 1 and 2 times per week, okay? But at least they're getting that recurring volume. And I'm training them pretty hard. I'm doing weighted chin-ups, I'm doing bodyweight pull-ups to failure, etc. I do have sore lats the next day. And I also have, like, I can't remember what day it is, but I have a single arm dumbbell row. On another day, I have a prone dumbbell row. But I'm not doing them with my thumb to my shoulder to train my upper back. I'm doing more of a swinging arc motion to train the lats. So once again, pretty lat heavy days. So this is how I like to look at training muscle groups. I definitely don't do a bro split approach where I'm just having like a big shoulder day and then I don't train shoulders ever again. Because if you're training shoulders on a Monday and then they're ready to go on a Thursday or Friday, then why the hell are you waiting to Monday to train again? You're just missing out on potential frequency that you can get. You're leaving gains on the table. I definitely wouldn't do it that way. So that's how I would like basically, you know, vaguely look at introducing them into a program. Now, there's a couple more points that I want to talk about. The first one being, hey, we lost a marker. Green man down. And this is more so just to maintain this kind of look max aesthetic. Now, you know, we've lost body fat. One thing I have to say with the calorie deficit though, when you hit that calorie deficit and you hit the body fat or leanness that you want to hit, you get your flat stomach, you get your 6-pack, get out of a calorie deficit, because a calorie deficit is not where good things happen for building muscle. Great things happen for getting leaner, for getting a 6-pack, for getting a flat stomach. It's the only way to do it. But if you're trying to build muscle and get jacked and get stronger, a calorie deficit isn't the optimal place to hang out. So once you get in the calorie deficit and you get the results, get out, right? Get in, get out. We don't want to be in a calorie deficit for longer than we need. It can impair your sleep, it can impair your recovery, it can impair your productivity at work, it can impair your emotions, your outlook on life, it can impair your performance and impair your performance in the gym. It can do a ton of bad stuff, right? But the plus is it gets you leaner. So once you do it, get out, right? Because if you want to build muscle, it doesn't really happen in a calorie deficit. It can if you're a beginner, if you've taken time off the gym, or if you've been training kind of hard and then you really dial up the intensity, or if you're on steroids, it's going to work. Just remember, a calorie deficit is hard, right? It's controlled starvation, let's call it how it is. But once you get there, you need to get out, because it doesn't have to be that hard forever. A calorie deficit isn't what life should look like. Life gets better than that, okay? So in order to maintain the whole Looksmaxxing thing, so we get lean, then we go to maintenance, and then we're focusing on these muscle groups that we want to build that I was talking about, your shoulders, your lats, etc. Now, what we want to just kind of like sprinkle on top of it is getting your 10,000 to 8,000 steps per day. And that's just basically to help you keep a physically active lifestyle, and it does help you to stay lean, increase your metabolic rate, allow you to eat more calories and enjoy life. It also can encourage you to get outside, or if you're at the gym, you know, you can just do your steps on your cardio machine, you can be on your phone or whatever you want to do, just listen to a podcast or listen to nothing, whatever you want to do. But I'm just a big fan of people being more physically active than just sitting on their ass at a sedentary role that they have at work. There's not too much reasoning behind that other than just increasing your metabolic rate. Obviously, there's physical health benefits that we don't need to talk about because we're all about Looksmaxxing today. One thing I really want to talk about, and this is as a dad, as a husband, as someone who's been through basically every sort of diet in the world and training program in the world, and, you know, having a wife, having dated a handful of people, not a ton, but there's a lot more to life than just what you look like, okay? And I feel like that's what Looksmaxxing kind of forgets, right? It's very shallow, right? There's a few Looksmaxxing people out there, you know, Clavicular in particular, he's the main guy that's spearheading it all. Obviously, he's spearheading it and he's getting all the traction, he's getting all the views, he's pushing this narrative that's worked for him. But it's extremely dangerous, okay? He's on testosterone, he's very young. Let's say he doesn't need it. He's just doing it to try and look better. He's microdosing methamphetamine, right? Who knows the long-term effects of what that's doing to him? Obviously, he's using it for, and I've seen an interview of him, he's trying to reduce his appetite so that he can stay lean. But mate, you're taking methamphetamine. That's not the way to go. You know, he's also smashing his face with a hammer to try and, you know, recreate his jawline. You know, I don't know what else he's doing, but then there are other people that are kind of branching off into, you know, doing things like Botox and filler and even getting surgeries, wearing makeup, wearing mascara, all that kind of stuff. Look, I'm not trying to stop anyone from doing anything like that. And I had Invisalign, like, to make my teeth straight, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite here because I Looksmaxxed my teeth, if you want to put it that way. So I'm never one to cast any judgment because that actually changed my life. I was a TV presenter at the time and back in New Zealand, and I was watching myself back on TV, and I'd take photos, and I was on social media and stuff, and I would always look at my teeth and feel a bit self-conscious. And I did Invisalign. It took ages. It was quite a painful process over like a couple of years, and I remember I was dating at the time, and you have to take them out when you eat, so I'd like go to the bathroom, take them out, come back, eat, you know, and then finish, put them back in, and like people know you're wearing them, so they kind of look at you funny. And when you're dating, obviously it's not the coolest look, but anyway, we made it through that. So I would be a hypocrite if I'd say like don't do surgeries or don't do this, and like just do it all the natural way and just get jacked and transform your body in the gym. That's all you need. But I just feel like it's not necessarily a narrative that we need to push, that it's just about the aesthetics, because after, you know, being married and having such a, you know, a beautiful wife and a great family, you know, there are more things than looks, right? So looks is a big part of it, right? It kind of gets you in the door, whatever you're physically attractive to. But then there are things like humor, right? Are you funny? Can you make someone laugh? Or can you just make someone feel loved? Can you make them feel included? Can you be interested in them? This is a big part that Looksmaxxing just doesn't take into account. It's just more about the physical of like, okay, I look good, I'm gonna pull this chick, I'm gonna pull this bird, I'm gonna sleep with her, and then whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from Looksmaxxing. But there are a lot of things, right? And there is kindness as well. You know, can you be kind to someone? Can you show them kindness? Can you be generous? And then there's the whole, like, can you look after? And this is kind of where I've stepped into this energy, I guess, as a dad and as a husband. Like, can you provide for your family? You know, that necessarily doesn't always have to be, you know, financially providing for a family, but can you make them feel protected? Can you make them feel safe? Can you provide for them? You know, can you be that strong role model that brings, you know, strength and power into the house? Not saying that females can't do that, but that's often the role that we play. I want young people to kind of aspire to be more than just looking beautiful, because cool, that's great. It can open doors for you. It's nice. It can get you the mate that you want. But there are way more important things in life that I think you should consider. The rant is finished now, don't worry. This is the blueprint and how to Looksmaxx in the gym without fillers, without Botox, without smashing your face with a hammer. And if you want to watch another video of mine, it's going to be right here. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye.